They say every house carries secrets. But when a young man inherited Hollowbrook House, the deed came with one warning carved in black ink. Never open the attic after midnight. This isn't folklore. This isn't rumor. This really happened. And what followed inside that house is why the attic has never been touched again. October 3rd, 1997. Hollowbrook. A quiet town on the edge of nowhere. The story begins with Ethan Marlowe, 28 years old, a man who never expected his uncle's death to change his life. The Hollowbrook estate, a large Victorian house tucked behind a wall of oak trees, had stood abandoned for nearly 2 decades. Locals avoided the property. Too many whispers about screams in the night, too many stories of people who stayed there and left shaken. But Ethan wasn't a believer. He worked in IT, lived a normal city life, and saw the inheritance as nothing more than an opportunity. A house this size, free and clear, could set him up for life. When he arrived to claim the property, the solicitor handed him a yellowed folder with the deed. At the bottom, written in his uncle's scratchy handwriting, was the line that would unsettle him more than anything else. The attic must never be opened after midnight. The solicitor gave a nervous laugh when Ethan raised an eyebrow at it. Superstition, I suppose. Every old house has them. But Ethan noticed something. She wouldn't look him in the eye as she said it. Ethan moved in with nothing but a suitcase, a laptop, and an old futon. At first the house was quiet. Dust coated the halls, floorboards creaked, and the electricity flickered like it hadn't been used in years. Still, he felt a strange comfort in the solitude, but the first warning signs came quickly. On his second night, while unpacking, Ethan swore he heard footsteps above him. Slow, dragging, measured. He froze, staring at the ceiling. No one else was supposed to be in the house. The sound stopped as soon as he moved toward the attic stairs. On October 5th, Ethan visited the small-town diner for breakfast. The locals were friendly until he mentioned where he was staying. The entire room fell silent. One older man leaned over and said, "That house doesn't belong to anyone." "It keeps what it takes," another woman muttered under her breath. "Your uncle tried to warn you." When Ethan pressed for answers, they avoided his questions. All they said was the same thing, again and again. "Don't go in the attic." The next few nights grew stranger. Ethan would wake to his phone buzzing at 3:17 a.m., only to find there was no call history. He'd set tools on the kitchen counter and they'd vanish, only to reappear in the upstairs hallway. Doors he locked before bed would be wide open in the morning, still. He told himself it was exhaustion, or maybe he wasn't used to the place yet. But on October 9th, the events became impossible to dismiss. That night, Ethan sat in the living room, flipping through his uncle's old books. The grandfather clock struck midnight. The house was silent, until he heard it. A soft scratching sound from the attic door. It wasn't mice. It wasn't the house settling. It was deliberate, like fingernails against wood, slow and steady. Ethan held his breath, staring up at the ceiling. Then, clear as day, he heard a whisper drift down through the floorboards. "Let me out." And that was the moment Ethan realized Hollowbrook House wasn't empty. October 10th, 1997. Hollowbrook House. Ethan didn't sleep after hearing the whisper. He sat awake on the futon, staring at the attic door from the living room below. His rational mind kept repeating explanations. Wind through a crack, old wood shifting, a dream mistaken for sound. But another part of him, the one that remembered the locals' hushed warnings, kept whispering back, "You heard it." Someone spoke. At 8:23 a.m., Ethan phoned his friend Laura Simmons, back in the city. She was the kind of friend who mocked horror movies and laughed at ghost tours, so he expected her to tell him he was overreacting. "Ethan, you're going to think I'm insane, but I swear the attic—" "It whispered to me last night." Laura, laughing. "The attic whispered?" "Ethan, come on." "Ethan, I'm not joking. Midnight hit, and I heard scratching, then a voice, like someone asking to be let out." Laura, "Old houses creak, and you've been living off diner coffee. You're exhausted. Don't start losing it." Her dismissal irritated him, but also reassured him. Maybe she was right. Maybe sleep deprivation has blurred reality. Still, he couldn't shake the sensation that the house was listening to him. By October 12th, the disturbances had become routine. Lights flickered when Ethan walked upstairs. His wristwatch, which had worked fine for years, began freezing at 12:20 a.m. every night. He heard soft thuds from the attic, like something dropping or pacing. On October 14th, Ethan recorded himself sleeping. When he played the tape back, the first few hours were silent. But at 12:33 a.m., there it was, a low humming, rhythmic, almost like a lullaby. And at 12:38 a.m., a voice, faint but distinct, murmured, "You hear me now?" Ethan dropped the recorder. His hands shaking, Ethan's paranoia drove him back into town. He asked questions in the diner again, but this time the locals grew hostile. One woman snapped, "Your uncle didn't listen." And look where it got him. When Ethan pressed her, the cook behind the counter shook his head. "Leave it alone, son. Hollowbrook's been quiet since he died. Don't wake it back up." That word, it, clung to Ethan. Not him, not them. It. On October 16th, while rummaging through the upstairs study, Ethan found a locked drawer. Inside was a bundle of letters bound with twine. They were all addressed to his uncle, written between 1975 and 1980. The letters carried a strange tone. Neighbors begging him to sell the house. Friends asking why he wouldn't sleep in town anymore. And one, dated July 2nd, 1979, read, "We heard the attic again. If you won't burn the house, at least lock it. Don't be a fool. It doesn't ask forever. It takes." Ethan shoved the letters back in the drawer, his pulse racing. His uncle had known. The warnings weren't a joke. October 17th, 1997. That night, Ethan decided he needed proof. He set up his camcorder in the upstairs hallway, pointing at the attic door. He sat in the living room below, wide awake, notebook in hand. The grandfather clock struck 12. At first, silence. Then, 3 knocks from inside the attic. Ethan's pen froze mid-word. The knocks grew louder, followed by a dragging scrape, like furniture being pulled across the floor. The camcorder upstairs caught it all. At 12:17 a.m., the handle of the attic door twitched, not once. Not randomly. It turned gently, like someone trying the lock from the other side. Ethan bolted upstairs, adrenaline drowning his fear. He grabbed the camera. Through the grainy lens, the attic handle moved again, this time harder, rattling against the latch, and then a whisper directly into the microphone. "Ethan." The name was so clear, so intimate that he dropped the camcorder. The next morning, Ethan drove 2 towns over to St. Joseph's Church. The priest, Father Callahan, listened as Ethan spilled everything. The whispers, the scratching, the name. The priest's face tightened. He asked one question, "Have you opened the attic?" When Ethan shook his head, Father Callahan exhaled relief. "Then don't. Whatever it is, you cannot give it an entry." Ethan pressed for more, but the priest refused. He only handed Ethan a small vial of holy water and said, "Keep it by the attic door." The friend's visit, by October 20th, Ethan's fear outweighed his skepticism. He begged Laura to visit for the weekend. She arrived late afternoon, carrying groceries and her usual sarcasm. "Laura, so this is the haunted mansion. Charming. Ethan, you'll see tonight. I'm not crazy." That evening they cooked pasta, drank wine, and Ethan almost felt normal again. Until the clock neared midnight. He insisted she sit with him in the living room, recorder running. Laura rolled her eyes but agreed. At 12:14 a.m., the scratching began. Slow, deliberate. Laura's smirk faltered. At 12:19, the attic door rattled violently. Laura whispered, "Ethan, that's not possible. No one's up there, right?" And then, both of them heard it. A voice, deep and guttural, hissed through the floorboards. "Both of you." Laura went pale, clutching Ethan's arm. For the first time, she believed him. At 12:26 a.m., something slammed against the attic door so hard the hallway light flickered out. They bolted upstairs together, terrified but drawn to the sound. The attic door shuddered on its hinges, the lock straining. Dust fell from the ceiling as if the house itself were shaking, and then they saw it. From the thin gap beneath the attic door, a hand slid through. Pale, skeletal fingers, clawing desperately across the floorboards. Laura screamed. Ethan dropped the holy water. The hand jerked back into the darkness, just as the lock snapped. The attic door began to creak open. October 20th, 1997. The attic door shuddered. The lock bent out of shape, and both Ethan and Laura froze. Neither spoke. They could hear the slow squeal of hinges as the door edged open, only a few centimeters, before slamming shut again with a violent crack. Dust rained from the ceiling. The hallway bulb flickered once, twice, then blew out completely, plunging them into near darkness. Laura grabbed Ethan's arm, her nails digging in. Laura, whispering, "Tell me you saw that hand." "Tell me I'm not losing my mind, Ethan. I saw it." God, I saw it. And then silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. They fled downstairs, slamming the stairwell door shut, pushing a heavy chair against it like children hiding from a nightmare. At 12:27 a.m., the house went still. No scratching, no whispers. The attic seemed to fall back into slumber, but neither of them could shake the image of that pale skeletal hand. Laura sat on the futon, pale as the moonlight filtering through the curtains. Laura, "Ethan, that wasn't human. No one's been locked in your attic for 20 years. Whatever's up there, it's not alive. Ethan, then what the hell is it? Why me? Why my uncle?" Laura didn't answer, because there wasn't one. The next morning, October 21st, Ethan replayed the camcorder footage from the hallway. The camera had captured everything, the rattling, the whispering, the door shifting open. But when the skeletal hand slid beneath the door, the footage glitched. The screen tore with static, distorting the image. Worse, when Ethan turned up the volume, the whisper that followed wasn't just background noise. It was his own voice, breathy, distorted, whispering, "Let me out." Laura stepped back, shaking her head. "Laura, that's you." "Ethan, that's you." He denied it, but the recording didn't lie. Later that afternoon, an unexpected knock rattled the front door. It was Martha Green, a neighbor in her 60s. Her hands trembled as she held out a casserole dish, but her eyes never softened. "Martha, I heard there's someone living here again." "Ethan." "Yes, I'm Ethan. My uncle left me there." "Martha, then you should leave it." "Tonight, if you're smart," she leaned in, lowering her voice. "Martha, your uncle used to say it fed on attention. That's why he told no one what he saw. The more you listen, the more it listens back." Ethan pressed her for details, but she shook her head and left quickly, muttering something about the blood in the beams. That night, rummaging through his uncle's study again, Ethan found a journal tucked behind a row of encyclopedias. The entries spanned years. Some were mundane notes about weather, repairs, finances, but others, especially those after 1978, shifted into paranoia. John 3, 1979. It scratched again last night. I sprinkled salt along the attic door. The noises stopped for a week. Then it hummed louder. Feb 14, 1979. It knows my name now. It whispers at midnight. Sometimes it sounds like me. Sometimes like a mother. May 22, 1980. I should leave, but where would I go? It would only follow. Hollowbrook keeps it contained. The deed binds it here. The attic must never open. If it gets out, it won't stop at me. Laura read over Ethan's shoulder, her voice shaking. "Laura, your uncle didn't just imagine this. He fought it. He trapped it, Ethan, and now it wants me to finish what he wouldn't." October 23 that night, Laura insisted on staying awake with Ethan. They sat in the kitchen with the lights on, drinking coffee. At 11:58 p.m., the refrigerator hummed loudly, almost like a growl. At 12:01, the overhead light buzzed and blew out. And then, the sound of footsteps descending from the attic. Ethan's blood ran cold. They weren't coming from above the ceiling. They were in the stairwell. The stairwell door trembled. The chair braced against it, sliding an inch. Laura whispered, "It's coming down." Ethan grabbed the vial of holy water Father Callahan had given him. The door rattled harder until something on the other side slammed 3 times. A deafening boom that made the whole house shake, and then silence. When Ethan opened his eyes, the stairwell door was still closed. The chair hadn't tipped, but when he turned, Laura was staring at the far corner of the kitchen. A shadow stood there, taller than any person, its outline stretching unnaturally toward the ceiling. Its head tilted like it was studying them. Laura, trembling, "Do you see it?" Ethan, "Yes." The shadow lingered for seconds, then dissolved into the walls. The next day, Laura wanted to leave. "Laura, this place isn't safe. Whatever's in the attic, it's loose now. Ethan, if you stay, it's going to kill you. Ethan, if I leave, it follows. My uncle said so. That's why he stayed. Someone has to contain it." Laura stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Laura, you're not him. You don't owe this house anything," but Ethan couldn't shake the pull. Something about Hollowbrook felt binding, like chains around his ankles. October 25 that night, Ethan tried sprinkling the holy water across the attic door. For the first time in weeks, there was no noise, no scratching, no whispers. But at 3:07 a.m., his phone buzzed again. He checked the screen, no call history. When he played back the voicemail, his blood froze. It was his own voice, distorted and low, saying, "She's next." Ethan ran to the living room where Laura was asleep on the couch. Her wrist was bleeding, 3 deep scratches fresh, running down her arm. She woke screaming, swearing she hadn't done it. "Laura, something pulled me under in my dream. I couldn't breathe." It said it wanted me, Ethan realized then. It wasn't content with him anymore. It wanted anyone inside Hollowbrook. On October 27th, Ethan drove Laura back to the city, begging her not to speak of what she'd seen. She promised, but her silence was full of fear. When Ethan returned alone that night, the house felt heavier. The moment the grandfather clock chimed midnight, the attic door creaked open on its own. This time, there was no scratching. No whisper, only footsteps, slow, deliberate, descending the attic stairs. Ethan stood frozen in the hallway, staring at the door as it opened wider, wider. And then, something stepped into view, a figure, identical to Ethan. Its eyes hollow, its mouth curling into a grin he had never made in his life. October 27th, 1997, the figure stood at the top of the attic stairs, its outline filling the doorway. Ethan's stomach dropped. He was staring at himself, same face, same build, even the same clothes he wore that night. But the eyes. The eyes were 2 dark pits, and when it smiled, the skin around its mouth tore wider than a human mouth should. The real Ethan couldn't move. His double stepped forward, 1 foot creaking against the wood. Then another, and then it whispered, with Ethan's own voice. "You've kept me locked away too long." Ethan bolted, heart hammering, crashing down the stairs into the kitchen. He grabbed the phone, dialing Laura's number, but the line was dead. Only static hissed through the receiver. Footsteps followed upstairs. Slow, unhurried. Ethan clutched the vial of holy water. His uncle's journal echoed in his mind. It doesn't ask forever, it takes. October 28th, 1997, 2:17 a.m. The entity didn't follow him into the kitchen that night. It lingered upstairs pacing. Ethan stayed awake until dawn, the house groaning around him. By morning, the attic door was shut again, the hall silent. But on the wall outside his bedroom, a word had been scratched deep into the paint. Mine. Later that day, Ethan drove back to St. Joseph's Church. Father Callahan agreed to see him again. Though his face paled at the sight of him, Ethan spilled everything, the double, the scratches, the voice recordings. The priest folded his hands tightly. "Father Callahan, it's not a ghost. Ghosts are remnants. This is mimicry. It learns, it copies, until it can replace." Ethan. "Replace?" Father Callahan. "Yes, if you open that attic fully, if you give it ground, it won't stop at this house. It will wear your skin in the world." He slid a small crucifix across the desk. "Father Callahan, keep this by your bed." And Ethan, "Don't go back." But Ethan already knew he would. Something tied him to Hollowbrook. Like a rope knotted around his chest. October 29, Laura showed up again, unannounced, holding her scratched wrist under a bandage. "Laura, I couldn't stop thinking about it. About you. I needed to see it again, to know I wasn't hallucinating." Ethan tried to protest, but secretly he was relieved. The thought of another night alone in Hollowbrook terrified him. That evening, they both sat in the living room with the camcorder running. Midnight came, at first silence, then both of their voices, faint overlapping, echoed from the attic. "Laura." "Ethan." Laura's eyes widened. "Laura, that's us." "Ethan, that's us." And then, the attic door flung wide open with a crash. 2 figures emerged. Both were twisted doubles, one of Ethan, one of Laura. Their features were almost perfect, but the eyes were hollow voids, and their smiles cut too wide. The doubles stood at the top of the stairs, tilting their heads in unison. Double Ethan, smiling. "We're tired of waiting." Double Laura, mocking. "Let us live." Laura grabbed Ethan's arm. Trembling, Laura. "We need to leave now." But the doubles moved in sync, stepping down the stairs. The floorboards moaned with each step. Ethan threw the vial of holy water toward them. It shattered against the stairs, splashing the double's feet. Both let out a piercing scream, not human, not animal, but something raw and furious. Their bodies distorted, twisting into shadows before retreating violently back into the attic. The door slammed shut. By morning, Laura was gone. She left a note. I can't. I won't. Leave this place, Ethan, before it becomes you. Ethan was alone again. That afternoon, he noticed something chilling in the mirror above the mantel. His reflection didn't smile back when he did. It blinked a second too late. October 31st, 1997, the air grew colder. Hollowbrook House groaned under the weight of autumn storms. At 11:58 p.m., Ethan sat in the living room, crucifix in one hand, journal in the other. He could hear whispers circling the walls, layered voices, his uncle's, his own, Laura's. At midnight sharp, every door in the house unlocked at once. He heard the clicks echo down the hall. Then, the attic stairs creaked. He looked up, and his double was already halfway down. This time, it wasn't alone. Behind it, more figures stepped from the attic. Dozens of them, all hollow-eyed, all wearing faces. Ethan recognized his uncle, neighbors from town, even people he didn't know, all smiling the same inhuman smile. Ethan backed against the living room wall, crucifix shaking in his hand. The double reached the bottom of the stairs, extending its hand toward him. Its grin stretched impossibly wide as it whispered in his own voice, "You belong with us now." And then, all the lights in Hollowbrook House went out. October 31st, 1997, Hollowbrook House. 12:23 a.m. The lights died. The room plunged into suffocating black. Ethan's lungs seized as if the air itself had thickened. He could still hear them, the doubles, shuffling, whispering, filling the staircase and hallway. Dozens of voices spoke at once. Some sounded like Ethan, others like his uncle. Others like strangers long gone. Join us. We are you. We've waited. When the lights flickered back on for half a second, Ethan saw them clearly. The hallway was crowded wall to wall with hollow-eyed figures, each one grinning. Each one a warped copy of someone who had once stepped foot in Hollowbrook. And in the front, his double extended a hand, its nails long and blackened. Ethan stumbled backward into the study, slamming the door and bracing it with a chair. The doubles scratched at the wood, dozens of nails raking down the paneling. On the desk lay his uncle's journal. The last page had only 4 words scrawled across it, written so violently the pen had torn the paper. The house is hungry. The scratching outside stopped. Silence pressed in. Ethan held the crucifix tight, whispering prayers he hadn't spoken since childhood. And then, from just behind the study door, he heard his uncle's voice. Let them in. Ethan, you can't hold the house forever. When the sun rose, the doubles were gone. The house looked normal again. No scratches on the study door. No broken glass. No signs of the night before, but Ethan knew better. His reflection in the study window grinned at him, even though he wasn't smiling. Desperate, Ethan drove to the Hollowbrook Historical Society that afternoon. In dusty records, he found the original deed to the house, dated 1891. The language was strange, almost ceremonial. It spoke of a binding pact, of containment, of the attic being the vessel of the kept. One archivist, an older man named Robert Allen, glanced nervously at the page. Robert, you shouldn't be in that house. They built it on purpose, to hold something, not to live in, to contain. When Ethan asked what something meant, Robert shook his head. Robert, no one who's opened the attic after midnight ever walked out the same. Your uncle, he lasted longer than most. That night, Ethan considered leaving Hollowbrook for good. But when he tried to pack, the house resisted. The front door wouldn't unlock. The windows refused to open. His car keys were gone from the counter. It was as if Hollowbrook itself had closed its jaws around him. At 11:59 p.m., Ethan sat in the living room, crucifix in one hand, journal in the other. His heart hammered as the grandfather clock chimed 12. The attic door upstairs burst open with a sound like thunder. This time, only one figure descended. His double. It moved slowly, deliberately until it stood just a few feet from him. Its grin widened, splitting the skin at the corners of its mouth. Double Ethan, you've starved us long enough. The house wants feeding. Ethan raised the crucifix, voice shaking. Ethan, you're not me. You'll never be me. The double only laughed. Then it spoke in his uncle's voice. Double, uncle's tone. I thought the same once. But the house doesn't care. It wears you until you're hollow. The figure stepped closer. Ethan felt the temperature plummet. His breath fogged in the air, and then the truth hit him. Hollowbrook didn't just trap something in the attic. Hollowbrook made it. Every owner, every resident who lived inside too long was consumed, replicated, added to the attic's collection. The doubles weren't ghosts. They were echoes of the house's victims, still hungry, still hunting for flesh to replace. Ethan ran to the fireplace, shoving logs aside, fumbling for matches. If the house was alive, maybe fire could kill it. But as soon as the flames rose, the doubles screamed. Their cries filled every wall, every floorboard. Shadows stretched across the ceiling, writhing in pain. The double lunged at him. Ethan swung the crucifix, but its skin only hissed. Not stopping its advance, it grabbed his wrist, its grip like iron. Ethan gasped as the thing's face shifted, first into Laura's, then his uncle's. Then finally his own again. Double Ethan, smiling. You'll burn with me. The fire spread quickly, catching the old wallpaper, racing across the beams. Smoke filled the living room. Ethan staggered back, coughing, the crucifix slipping from his hand. The doubles screamed louder, retreating toward the attic. But not his double. It stayed, standing in the firelight, grinning, and as the flames licked the ceiling, Ethan realized something horrific. His double had a reflection in the mirror. He did not. November 2nd, 1997, 3:14 a.m. The fire raged. Hollowbrook House moaned as its bones cracked and beams splintered. Smoke clawed at Ethan's lungs as he staggered through the choking black. The double followed him, its grin never fading, its skin blistering from the flames but refusing to fall. Double Ethan. You think fire kills hunger? Ethan lunged for the back door, still locked. He slammed his shoulder into it, but the house held tight, as if the wood had fused with his fate. Behind him, the doubles in the attic screamed like an army of the damned. The flames devoured the walls, licking up the staircase. The air shimmered with unbearable heat. Ethan knew if he stayed, he'd either burn or become one of them. He hurled the brass crucifix through the nearest window. The glass shattered, spilling smoke into the cold night. With raw desperation, Ethan dove headfirst through the opening. The shards ripped across his arms and face, but he didn't care. He tumbled into the wet grass outside, coughing, his chest burning for clean air. For a moment, relief washed through him. He'd escaped until he looked back. The attic window was alive with faces. His uncle Laura, strangers he didn't recognize, all pressed against the glass, all grinning. And at the center was his double, standing in the firelight as though the flames bent around it. November 2nd, 1997. Dawn. By sunrise, Hollowbrook House was nothing but a smoking skeleton. Firefighters stood in disbelief, claiming the fire spread too fast, too unnaturally. For an ordinary blaze, Ethan sat on the hood of an ambulance wrapped in a blanket, his wounds stitched but shallow. When asked if anyone else had been inside, Ethan shook his head. Ethan. No, just me. But in his chest, he knew it was a lie, because when he glanced at the blackened remains, he saw a figure still standing in the ruins, his double, untouched, watching. Doctors treated his burns and lacerations, but nurses whispered about his strange behavior. They claimed his reflection in the bathroom mirror sometimes didn't move with him. One night, a nurse swore she saw Ethan's reflection smile while his real face remained blank. The official hospital report noted severe trauma and possible hallucinations. Ethan knew better. The house might be gone, but Hollowbrook had left its mark inside him. Weeks later, Ethan returned to the Historical Society. He demanded to see the full archives, especially those concerning the land before 1891. What he found chilled him deeper than the attic ever had. The foundation of Hollowbrook had been built over a colonial gallows site. More than 50 men and women had been executed there for witchcraft, treason, and murder. Their bodies were left unburied, their souls believed cursed to wander. The house had not simply contained them, it had fed on them, using every new owner as fuel to grow stronger. And now, without the house, Ethan feared those souls had nowhere to stay but inside him. December 1997 ate his small apartment. Ethan covered every mirror. Aluminum foil, blankets, duct tape, anything to keep from seeing his own face. But reflections are patient. One night, his bathroom mirror cracked without reason. Behind the fractured glass, his double stared back. Not trapped anymore. Waiting. It mouthed the words he couldn't hear, but he knew exactly what it said. The house isn't gone. It's in you. 2003. This part comes from testimony collected by journalist Maya Green, who revisited the Hollowbrook property 6 years after the fire. The lot remains abandoned, but locals claim strange shadows move across the charred ground at night. Children dare each other to run across it at midnight, and those who do often report seeing faces in the smoke. Ethan Holloway disappeared in 1999. His apartment was found empty, but every mirror in the unit was shattered from the inside out. Police never located his body, but according to Maya's notes, neighbors swore they still saw Ethan sometimes, through windows, in reflections, or walking past Hollowbrook's ruins in the fog. Always silent, always smiling, Hollowbrook House no longer exists in wood and stone, but the deed still does. It sits in a sealed box in the county archives, stamped with the warning Ethan's uncle underlined in 1984. Never open the attic after midnight. Whether the house burned or not is irrelevant. Some things don't need walls to contain them. Some houses live on inside the ones who survive them. And if you ever find yourself staring too long into your reflection after midnight, ask yourself one question: the end